Hello everyone, my name is Michelle, and today we're going to be going over I. So what is I? I is an imaginary number, and I equals the square root of -1. So how would we use I? So for example, if we have the square root of -36, well, we know that the square root of +36 equals 6. So the square root of -36 will equal 6i. And that pattern is the same for really everything. So if we were to square root -81, it would equal the square root of +81 would equal 9. So the answer of square root of -81 would be 9i. And just to write that in the bottom, it would be the same thing for square root of -25 would be 5i. Square root of -49 would be 7i. And just that pattern. Alright, so now that we've gone over that, we're going to go over another important concept, powers of I. So there are really only 5, or really 4 powers of I you have to remember. We have I to the 0th power, I to the 1st power, I to the 2nd power, I to the 3rd power, and I to the 4th power. Alright, so I to the 0th power is the same as any number to the 0th power, 1. I to the 1st power is the same as any number to the 1st power, so it would be itself, I. I to the 2nd power would be I times I, which would be -1. I to the 3rd power, which would be I times I, which would be -I. And I to the 4th power would be I times I times I, which would be +1. Alright, so this is really all you have to remember to solve any power of I question. Let me show you what I mean. So say we have to solve I to the 30th. So the trick is that we want to find the closest multiple of 4. Alright. So we want to find the closest multiple for 230. So, and the closest multiple would be 4 times 7, which would equal 28. And now we will take this 30 and take this 28 and subtract them, 30 minus 28, which would equal 2. So what that means is I to the 30th power equals I to the 2nd power. And looking back at our blue section on the left, I to the 2nd power equals -1. So yeah, so you can solve any power of I equation by remembering powers of I up to the 4th power. And this trick works on anything. Let me do another example. I to the 15th. We want to find the closest multiple of 4 to 15, which would be 4 times. Alright, so we find the closest multiple that's below it. So 4 times 3, which would equal 12. We do 15 minus 12, which would equal, and we will get 3. So I to the 3rd will equal -I. And say if this was it had a coefficient, so say this was 5 times I to the 15th, all we have to do is stick a 5 in there, so it does not affect any other number. Hello everyone, Michelle here again. There is something I forgot to mention. So, usually when we have an expression, say we had 48 to I the second, your teachers and on a test, they're going to want you to simplify that I to the second. So we know that I to the second equals -1, so that was simplified to -48. And that is the same thing for any power of I. That becomes an integer. So I to the second and I to the 4th, I to 0 doesn't really count. So if the I can simplify to -1 or 1, then you're going to want to simplify your expression. Or otherwise it is usually counted wrong. So this, yes. And they do equal each other, they are the same thing, but the -48 on the right is more simplified. Always simplify your answers. Okay, back to the video. Alright. So, let me just go over a quick reminder. I works like any other, its exponents work like any other number's exponents. So when you divide 2 powers of I, you would be doing 2 minus 3, and you get -I. If you multiply 2 powers of I together, you add them like you do with any exponent. If an I was raised to another power, say 4, you'd multiply them, and you'd get I to the 8th. So yeah, the exponents on I work like any other exponents, and in essence, I just works like another variable. So there aren't really any special rules for it. All you have to remember is if you have an I to an any power, usually in the questions they expect you to simplify it. Alright, so now that I'm done talking about I'm going to move over to my camera and show you how to do this on a graphing calculator. So it's important to know how to do it by hand, but if a calculator is available, it's also best to check your work on the calculator. Don't do your work on the calculator, check it on the calculator. Do your work by hand first. Alright, I'll be back. Hello everyone, I'm here with a TI-84 calculator and I'm going to show you how to use a graphing calculator to solve expressions with I or powers with I. And I'm pretty sure this only works with TI-84 or TI-83 graphing calculators, or any physical graphing calculator. That being said, I don't think it works with scientific calculators, which is like your basic calculator, or Desmos, or which is an online graphing calculator. Now you can get a really good online TI-84 calculator at numworks.com, numworks.com, and I'll link that in the description. So we can use that or a physical one. Okay, so let's start by first hitting on. And then what we're going to do is go to mode next to the second button. Use our arrow keys to scroll down until we get to the row with real, a plus b1, a plus bi, and re that one, doesn't matter. So we're going to use our right arrow key to go to a plus bi and hit enter. So that is going to let us calculate imaginary numbers. Then you can hit second and mode again to quit. And now that we're back in our main screen, we hit second again. And then at the bottom on the dot, we're gonna hit that. And now we have I, so we can do anything to this. We can raise it to a power by hitting the raise button and to the third power. That would get us negative I. And we can also solve things that the solution may be I or have I in them. So like we can get the square root of negative 36, which is 6i. Or we can solve 12i squared divided by 4i, and then the calculator will solve it all for you. So yeah, calculators can do anything, but even if they can, do not do your work on a calculator. Calculators are wrong a lot of times, whether it be because you type something wrong or because a setting is off. So always do your work on paper first and check it with a calculator. Okay, so today we talked about I and the powers of I and how to do all of that on paper and on a calculator. So I hope you learned something today and have a great day.